Following program are pre-recorded Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bachman, with Lori Hens from Beck News. You can go to BeckTV.plus, follow all things Summit Carbon Solutions, proposed CO2 pipeline, and all kinds of other stuff as well. A lot of great investigative reporting. And Lori, thanks for coming in again this morning. I wanted to pick up where kind of we left off last week. We were talking about in D.C., a bunch of people signing on to some, it's not legislation yet, but it's kind of a precursor.
Well, I can read it to you. This was to a letter to Mike Johnson dated August 6th of this year. And it says, Dear Speaker Johnson, as members of the House Republican Conference, there are 18 of the people who signed this. We write to urge you to prioritize business and market certainty as you consider efforts to repeal or reform the Inflation Reduction Act. So they could smell it coming in August that if it was a new regime in the White House, that it might be repealed. We agree the partisan process of passing the IRA created a deeply flawed bill that will prevent the development of life-saving cures, empower the IRS to harass small businesses, and distort energy markets.
But we'd like to double down on
However, that's right. That's exactly right.
But
and then 2 paragraphs later, it says prematurely repealing energy tax credits, particularly those which were used to justify investments that already broke ground, would undermine private investments and stop development that is already ongoing. A full repeal would create a worst case scenario where we would have spent billions of taxpayer dollars and received next to nothing in return.
So we want to spend more billions of taxpayer dollars.
Break that down for a moment, right?
And still receive next to nothing.
Exactly. Energy tax credits, they go on to say, have spurred innovation, incentivized investment, and created good jobs in many parts of the country, including many districts represented by members of our conference. No kidding. And then they go on to say, as Republicans, we support an all-of-the-above approach to energy development and tax credits. Watch for that phrase whenever you put your red flag up.
And I apologize, but I used to be an all-of-the-above.
Yep.
And this goes back to 2011, 2012, all of the above. Great. Bring it on. But I've got a caveat with that. And I'm getting away from that methodology and that mindset because it's been bastardized so bad. But I'm about energy innovation. But the caveat for me is 5 years. I'm okay with
sunsets.
Cap it, sunset it.
Yep.
Here's your seed money. This could be the next latest, greatest energy innovation. This could be the flux capacitor.
You know that the government doesn't do that, though.
I
Once
know.
something starts, it's in perpetuity.
Well, that's why
Yes.
you need to put a time. And my rule of thumb is 5 years, because after that, what happens? You've taken the incentive from the private sector to innovate and make sure something's viable. If you're going to just subsidize it, and the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, especially in North Dakota, is ethanol. If you're going to subsidize, and by the way, people go, oh, there's no subsidies on it. You're right, but a mandate's a subsidy.
Yeah.
Call it what you will, a mandate. When you're mandated to have a certain amount of a product in another product, that's a subsidy. So when you're looking at energy innovation, that all of the above, quote unquote, needs to have a cap on it. Because the biggest detriment is, okay, you're taking the incentive to innovate and make it viable from the private sector, but what else are you doing? You're taking R&D dollars away from something that potentially could be that next big thing.
Right.
Whether it's a hydrogen,
innovation,
a flux capacitor,
whatever
it looks
is.
like.
Correct.
There needs to be a timeline on that. It's like, I'm a little okay with, here's your seed money, and this sounds like a good idea, and go start doing the research and the R&D on this, but you have to make it viable.
No,
Simple.
so in this
Pretty
case,
simple.
You're exactly right about it. But as soon as they say we support an all of the above approach to energy development and tax credits, that this is the last part, that incentivize domestic production, innovation, and delivery from all sources. So it's kind of a bait and switch on that.
But how do you incentivize
innovate
domestic anything
and incentivize it.
When you're here, we're just going to put you on the taxpayer dole forever, and you don't have to do any of those other things that we're talking about.
Right. Well, this whole letter it's a one-pager. It's very concise. It says, "We appreciate your work to unite the conference on this important matter," meaning there are 18 of us and the rest of the conference needs to get on board with us because we say so. Please consider us partners in reforming our tax policies in a way that puts America first while ensuring certainty for industry and the energy sector. Then it is sincerely signed by 18 of these House members, including people. This is where they are from. And I did this last week. This is where they are from. They're from New York, California, Chavez DeRemer from Oregon, Molinaro from New York, Indiana, New York, Virginia, New York, California, Utah, Don Bacon from Nebraska, who fits with the California people, and then New Jersey, Ohio. There's Marionette Miller Meeks from Iowa, Arizona, but Georgia and Nevada. And if you look at where they are from, and you look at these are
supposed to be Republicans.
These are not the conservative people. These are the guys who are there out to try to get things for their constituents in their states of New York and California.
Okay, and this is about energy.
Correct.
With the exception of California, which that's a different animal because of the climate politically there when it comes to oil and gas and energy, although they're one of the biggest consumers of energy. Nobody's from an energy state.
They're really not. That's the interesting part of it. You look at this, Nebraska's kind of in there, but Don Bacon is, but not really.
On the ethanol side, not on the actual production
and they do have 1 out of 18 from Iowa. 1.
Which I don't know they have any oil or gas wells in Iowa.
Exactly. So these are not energy states.
They're not energy producing states.
No, that's correct.
So blue states for one and non-energy producing states for another. And I'm throwing California out because that's just a mess. Mm-hmm. So that's the other takeaway on that. These aren't energy producing states. Where's the Oklahomas and the Texas and the North Dakota and the Wyoming? Yep, they're not there.
Yep. No, it's true. You just don't see them. It's just really interesting. I did my homework on this. They don't say what state they're from. I went and assigned the state so that I could figure it out.
Which means they're on the subsidy side.
Correct.
The scam side of, which is kind of around the periphery of energy production.
To me, that letter alone just identified what's going on. I mean, it was very obvious to me after looking at that there is a lobby out there that's jumping on board regarding these tax credits, and that's
where's our free money?
They're
and we're
trying
only $33 trillion
they're trying to
in debt.
protect the tax credits that the Biden administration enforced.
Yeah, we're not in debt, and we're not going to take your tax dollars and give it to. Well, I equate that to non-traditional energy producers, which we need them. We don't need the snake oil salesmen running around trying to collect stuff for their own states that they're not energy producers. They're energy consumers.
Exactly. So I've got North Dakota Industrial Commission information when we come back.
Oh, we got to hear about that. That's coming up next. I'm Steve Bakken along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to becktv.plus. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to becktv.plus, follow all things Summit Carbon Solutions, proposed CO2 pipeline. And, all right.
On the 12th, the North Dakota Industrial Commission had their meeting. It was really interesting because the time changed 3 times, too, for that meeting. And I don't know what that was all about.
I noticed that. They kept moving that around.
Yeah, it was 1 o'clock, then it was 1:30, then it was 2, then it became 3 p.m. And I thought...
Waiting for Burgum to get here?
I don't know. It was really odd. And maybe one of the other guys had a conflict and had trouble getting there. I don't know. But they did finally start at 3:07 in the afternoon, and they got going, and they just went through... one little item, and then they went right straight to the 3 injection wells that they wanted to permit, and just went right straight through it. And it was fascinating to me because there were such innocuous and unimportant questions asked. There were like 3 questions asked by the commission people of the presenters of their recommendation that they pass it, and it was like they were all quite uninterested in any information. I was kind of shocked. I would have thought that there would have been a little bit more back and forth questioning about what was going on, but apparently it wasn't of interest.
One of the things that and for those that aren't familiar with the North Dakota Industrial Commission, of course, it's the governor, the ag commissioner, and
the attorney general.
Mm-hmm. And it's the most powerful commission in the state of North Dakota. And I throw the Public Service Commission like right below that because it affects people's lives. And the Public Service Commissioners have flat out said, and I will disagree with their interpretation, that in their permitting process, they're not allowed to look at public safety. Okay. There wasn't a single public safety concern, question, anything raised at the Industrial Commission level either. Who's in charge of taking care of North Dakotans? For me as an elected official, it comes back to public safety is number one. I'll jump on board with the property rights and everything else, but your job as an elected official is to make sure that your constituents are safe. Nobody's addressing the public safety issue on the permitting side of this.
Right.
So it's not the Public Service Commission who, if you read, I will say their interpretation says that, no, that is under your purvey. And the Industrial Commission's not addressing it. Who is? Who's in charge of North Dakotans' safety?
And the local subdivisions aren't allowed.
No. They took that away from the local political subdivisions.
Right. That's a great question. Maybe that's not of interest to them either. It appears that is low on the totem pole now. A couple of interesting notes. After the Industrial Commission, and you may have heard by now, the Industrial Commission unanimously approved all of those 9 different items and 3 separate Class 6 injection wells for Oliver and Mercer County and then one little area in Morton County. But at the same time, some interesting things were brought up, and that leads me to the draft storage facility permit. The case number, by the way, is 30869 for this draft storage facility permit. It was established on April 15th, 2024. And if you look at the draft storage facility permit on page 5, on the top of page 5, it says specifics. It's talking about the operator shall notify the commission at least 48 hours in advance to witness a mechanical integrity test of the tubing casing annulus for the annulus for the injection and monitoring wells. The packer must be set within 100 feet of the uppermost perforation and in the 25 CR-80 casing for the TB Line Gang 1 and TB Line Gang 2 injectors, and 13 CR-80 casing for the Milton Flemmer 1 monitor. That number 13 CR-80 is important because that happens to be...
We've talked about this before.
13 chrome steel. 13 chrome steel you may have heard us talk about previously because that is the same steel that was the steel that failed at the Decatur, Illinois ADM facility just a couple months ago.
And then upon further testing, they found a 100% fail rate with it eventually. Granted, it's over time, but a 100% fail rate in, and I forget which higher education institute. Do you recall?
I don't remember which one it was.
There was a university that did a bunch of studies on this,
and
they found a 100% fail rate.
So 13 chrome steel, people, is what we are getting with our injection wells, and particularly the Flemmer one. So Flemmer 1 monitor and 13 CR-80 casing for the Milton Flemmer 1 monitor. Depending on evaluation, the operator shall run the same test on a 5-year schedule for the TB Line Gang 1, TB Line Gang 2, and Milton Flemmer 1 wells. So 5 years before you have to do the testing again. It's not constant. It's not weekly. It's not yearly. It's 5 years.
The thing with the Industrial Commission on these permits is, for those that don't know, the Public Service Commission, the siting side of it. The Industrial Commission, there's a bunch of different permits that fall under their purvey because it's the injection side, the permitting for the facilities. They're not dealing specifically with the pipeline. They're dealing with all the ancillary stuff that has to go around that pipeline.
So right after the North Dakota Industrial Commission made their ruling on December 12th, that same day there was a news release put out by Dakota Resource Council and Zach Cassidy, and then Bold Alliance, and that's Mark Hefflinger in Nebraska. The pipeline fight continues. It is titled, After the North Dakota Industrial Commission Permits Summit CO2 Wells. The line underneath it says Summit still needs a pipeline state permit in South Dakota. Meanwhile, several court cases are also pending, it says. Bismarck landowners and grassroots advocacy organizers vow to continue fighting after an unsurprising decision by the Industrial Commission. The North Dakota Industrial Commission, comprised, as you said, of Governor Doug Burgum, the Attorney General, and the Agriculture Commissioner, approved Summit Carbon Solutions permits for Class 6 injection wells. Summit's permit in Minnesota was also granted today on the 12th by the state's Public Utilities Commission in Minnesota. Summit proposes to use these wells to inject carbon dioxide captured from 57 ethanol plants across Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and the Dakotas, a mile underground in Oliver and Mercer counties, beneath the homes of residents and the larger communities. The underground stored CO2 has been associated with potential hazards due to the nature of the chemical, including its corrosiveness and the risks it may pose to public safety. Recently, an underground breach occurred at an ADM-operated sequestration facility in Decatur, Illinois, the first commercial geologic sequestration operation in the United States. CO2 corroded that equipment, allowing the gas to migrate beyond the defined storage zone, narrowly avoiding the acidification of an aquifer that serves as a source of drinking water. Summit proposes to use the same grade material in North Dakota that was corrupted by carbon dioxide at the Decatur facility. Somebody's not paying attention here.
Somebody's not paying attention. Again, who's supposed to be in charge of the public safety side of things? And nobody wants to address it.
Fair question.
Lori Hintz with Beck News. I'm Steve Bach, and this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
News Talk is Bismarck and Mandan. Super Talk 1270. Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Superback 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to becktv.plus, follow all things Summit Carbon Solutions proposed CO2 pipeline. One of the other things with the Industrial Commission meeting that came out, and it was weird because, like you said, they moved the time 3 times. I was trying to juggle around, trying to catch a little bit of it online. I was like, what's going on now? One of the things that came out of it, a lot of things came out of it. One was a report by the CO2 education and outreach team, the project update.
31 pages.
You know, the $300,000 of my tax dollars, your tax dollars.
At work.
At work to re-educate, quote unquote, just build the camps and stick us all in that. But re-educate about CO2. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do you have to re-educate me about? That you're scamming my tax dollars on a federal level to make money, and you don't care about my personal health and safety. That's not what
they're teaching you.
Oh, but I already know that. You don't have to educate me on it. So I want to go through the team because this was, again, the title is CO2 Education and Outreach Project Update for the North Dakota Industrial Commission. And this we talked about it before, $300,000, our tax dollars, going to educate. So it's $300,000 going to support a private industry.
Correct.
There's so many things I applaud.
There's nothing public about this other than re-education of the public.
So here's the team in charge of re-educating us, and this is just a marketing tool. Brent Bogart, project lead. Marty Dahl, senior communications strategist. Heather Severson, media marketing specialist. Cody Schuler, video and digital marketing specialist. Jeff Simon, executive director, Western Dakota Energy. Raquel Strand, communication strategist. Chris Legassi, graphic designer. Mike Witt, web specialist. Elijah Swenson, social media marketing specialist. And Scott Hannon, partner in the Fieldstone Group. And by the way, if you ever look up who the principals of the Fieldstone Group are, you'll see why they're getting the money. Also interesting on this, NDSU Extension, EERC, EdND, which is the Economic Development Association of North Dakota Ethanol Council, Lignite Energy Council, North Dakota Petroleum Council. So this is the team in charge of re-educating us, because who's making money off this?
So who's and the EERC and NDSU, are those not state entities that we're also paying for at this point? So we're paying for those people, and additionally paying for them to re-educate us.
This is just a money suck like you would not believe. Well, for Kelly Armstrong can't get there quick enough.
I know,
Please.
right? I know.
Just
so true.
You cannot make this up.
There's another portion of this that was really interesting to me. It was kind of micro-targeting. And what they did is they profiled individual people, and I don't know how many are there on there, 16 different ones?
Anybody who is opposed to their project
13.
and their money grab, we've now been categorized.
So these, what they have done.
This is part of their marketing strategy.
This is part of their marketing strategy. They've named the type of person that needs the re-education.
You know who did a marketing strategy like this? The Nazis.
This is really creepy.
This is creepy.
And I'm going to give you some of the names of who they say: Advocate Anna, Activist Sarah, Average Joe, Community Organizer Nancy, Firefighter Carl, Healthcare Laura, Emily and Mark, just two people, Educator Jason, Rancher Rick, and like they put those a little later in the group, Farmer Jack, Retired Gary, and Political Sam. So these people, they have profiled.
We all been profiled.
They have profiled people.
We fall into a category.
That was shocking to me when I saw that, and I understand what they're doing. They're trying to figure out who the quote enemy is that needs re-education, but that was abhorrent.
So they can send different messaging out to. Wait a minute. I think I've seen this before. Isn't that what Summit's been doing? One message in Iowa, one message in South Dakota, one message on their website.
Everybody gets something tailored to them, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's not consistent, which is why everybody is so confused on the...
And concerned. And should be concerned.
Correct. No, that was personas, it says. If you look it up in the North Dakota Industrial Commission docket, you can find it. It was there for everybody to see, and I opened it up and looked at it, and I was surprised, to say the least. That was shocking. I was like, I guess that one over there is me. And what are they going to be targeting? So at least you'll know what's coming, because, if you fit into a quote category, I just thought that was absurd. That was absurd. And my own tax dollars going toward it is not my favorite thing either.
No. There's so many different levels that this is wrong. And I'll put it on another platform. It's wrong, period. It's wrong in North Dakota. This is not how we function in North Dakota. It's never been, nor should it be, how we do business in North Dakota on the backs of North Dakota taxpayers, on the backs of North Dakota farmers, on the backs of North Dakota ranchers, on the backs of North Dakota citizens. This is not the government that is supposed to be representing the people.
How do you feel about being called Rancher Rick or Farmer Jack or Retired Gary or Plant Worker David or Firefighter Carl, Community Organizer Nancy? That just, I couldn't believe it when I looked at that. I was like, okay, I know what they're doing, but I can't believe that they so boldly put that out there for everyone to see.
It's not gender basic. It's not anything other than it's carbon bias. You talk about race baiting and gender baiting. It's carbon baiting. I'm like, why is that even a thing?
Yeah, that was really interesting.
I mean, honest to God, that should terrify people.
Yeah.
That your tax dollars are being spent on a covert, and I'll call them covert, quasi hit team to re-educate those that might be opposed, and your tax dollars are paying for it.
And since when in America are we not allowed to have our own free will and free speech and thinking about things on our own?
If the First Amendment doesn't fit into the narrative, we're going to tell you what the First Amendment should be. I'm like, I don't expect this coming from Republicans.
I really don't either.
Supposedly it is.
Shocking.
There's so many things wrong on so many levels with this, and the one that was missing on the personas is innocuous errand, because there's a lot of people that just don't know what's going on.
And there is a lot of apathy about this. If you look at CO2 like a normal human being does, you don't see any danger whatsoever. The problem is that there is danger when you have over 2,100 PSIG in a 24-inch pipeline around
naturally occurring in the air and out in nature.
0.04% is fine. This is so high concentration, you asphyxiate if you come in contact with it, and you die. Well, you die, at least not super painful death. It's just a quick death.
Yeah, your tax dollars hard to worry. Well, you're either going to freeze to death or you're going to suffocate. So,
exactly.
This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Lori Hintz from Beck News. You can go to BeckTV.plus, find all things Semiconductor Solutions proposed CO2 pipeline. One of the things I want to get into, too, a little bit is the timeline, because that's getting more and more important as things are getting pushed back a little bit. And I was reading an article about PHMSA and what they're potentially waiting on. We'll talk about that as well. But one of the things came out in an article, and it kind of cracked me up. I'm like, but good Lord, they're right. We have to inject it, so we'll find out what it can do.
That is not really very comforting.
It's like Obamacare. We got to pass it so we can find out what's in it.
That is frightening. And in addition to that, the fact that people want to use you as a guinea pig is not very comforting. I don't like the idea. I don't know how many times I've heard various ranchers and farmers and people associated with this say, well, what are they? Why are they experimenting on us? Why are we the experiment?
Okay, one of the things because it was in recent timeline. Do you remember when they wanted to do that test boring up near Rugby, North Dakota, and people locally lost their crap because there was a rumor that they were looking at, it's for the oil industry, and they want to do a test well so they can bury radioactive material. And it's like, okay.
I remember.
It wasn't.
It was rejected.
It was rejected.
Soundly.
And actually, I think it would have been the second deepest boring. I mean, the scientific information that would have been found in that would have been amazing. But it wasn't about what people's perception was. I kind of equate this a little bit to that, because locally people went, no, not here. We're not going to put a garbage dump here.
Well, they call it NIMBY, NIMBY, not in my backyard.
But now we've got a scenario where they want to put a garbage dump in North Dakota for CO2. I'm like, there's a little correlation here to me, because it's injection.
Right. And Scott Skokas, who is at the Dakota Resource Council, actually has a quote in the press release that came out the same day as the North Dakota Industrial Commission's decision. And he says, furthermore, recent incidents in Illinois where CO2 leaked underground demonstrate that we do not know enough about this technology to use North Dakota as a testing ground. Even Summit has stated they cannot know the impacts of carbon dumping until they do them. So exactly as you said, we need to pass it to we need to pass it to
be Love Canal.
Or we could, have problems like they did in Illinois and get really close and maybe to the aquifer, which is really troubling.
2 weeks ago, go back and watch the Burleigh County Commission meeting where
were there Summit people there again?
Was talking about what could happen with the salt water. Mm-hmm. And, I'm kind of proud of the fact that North Dakota feeds the world. We truly do. 17 commodities, we're the number one producer. What happens if all this salt water gets to the surface because it's pressured out of where it normally exists? Whether that's on a large scale or a small scale.
Does it ruin the soil?
Add salt water to soil, you'll see what happens. What happens when there's a salt water spill out in the oil patch? Mm-hmm.
I'm not a rancher, but I do have common sense, and I do realize that
stuff doesn't grow that is consumable in an alkali flat.
Yep.
Period. So I would think anything putting North Dakota agriculture at risk for the sake of a small segment of North Dakota agriculture, one commodity, which, oh, by the way, there's only one ethanol plant in North Dakota to benefit our corn growers.
Yeah, of those 57 ethanol plants, I don't people realize that those are not North Dakota ethanol plants.
They're not North Dakota ethanol plants.
No, there's one, and it's on the eastern side of the state in Cass County area.
So what farmers are you benefiting? Not ours. Not ours. And by the way, I heard Thorolson might be considering pulling out of that with their ethanol plant because of some of what's going on and lack of information. And there is so many unknowns with this. It's like, hey, we're going to potentially wreak havoc on what could be junk science for the sake of a big experiment?
Well, Summit does continue to face some significant challenges. It encounters multiple permit appeals, local zoning regulations across the 5-state footprint. So various counties are pushing back separate lawsuits. According to this press release, it says separate lawsuits over the Public Service Commission's permitting decision have been launched by landowners and by Burleigh County. Additionally, the Northwest Landowners Association is suing the state over its amalgamation law, which allows the state to take away landowners' mineral rights without the usual legal remedies granted by eminent domain. They view it as a taking, and that's a phrase that everybody needs to get familiar with on this one.
Well,
too.
You might be familiar with a correlating term. It's called theft. So theft, taking, same thing.
Amalgamation.
Yes, theft, amalgamation, taking, they all equate to the same thing.
Now, this was a real interesting release by Hefflinger and also Emma Schmidt, Bold Alliance Pipeline Fighters Director. She says, we never expected any other outcome from this commission, particularly given Governor Burgum's business and political relationship with Summit's major investment partner, Continental Resources. At the end of the day, this predictable decision won't make a difference to the widespread project resistance. We'll continue to do everything we can to topple this stacked deck in order to protect the property rights and well-being of North Dakotans, she said.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Injected, so we'll see what happens.
That's troubling.
Yeah. There are so many different levels of what is going on. And to me, again, it still comes back to nobody's talking about public safety. What about the farmers and ranchers who
are along the route?
Or in the injection areas.
Right?
And that area is sizable when you start talking about the plume modeling from underground. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what are you displacing that's already there? In most cases, it's salt water. It could be minerals for a mineral holder. Now you're going to take their potential mineral rights away from something else. There's so many pieces of this that just does not fit the fabric of North Dakota. I want to hold you over for one more break, Lori,
Okay.
one more segment, because we still got a lot to cover, and hey, we could probably do 2 hours today on this. But, this is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town, weekday morning starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app. Without apology, The Regular Joe Show with Joe Gigante. Weekday evenings at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken along with Lori Hens from Beck News. You can go to becktv.plus. Find out all things Summit Carbon Solutions for both CO2 pipeline. Okay, I want to just come back a little bit on the Industrial Commission stuff, because there's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot that's under their purvey, but kind of a quick fire. There's a lot we missed. There's a lot going on out there, and please, I implore people, please start paying attention. Mm-hmm. Really start paying attention. And it's in the best interest of North Dakota.
Talk to your neighbors about it too and see if they know. I mean, just find out if anybody even knows about this, because chances are really good that your neighbors probably have never even heard that this is even a thing or a problem. And if they have, they probably don't understand why it is dangerous. This is dangerous. So one of the questions that Governor Burgum asked, then Governor Burgum asked, was at 3:32 p.m., and I wrote it down and said, how many landowners are involved in these permitting wells? And the answer was over 450 landowners. Is it going to be economically beneficial, he asked. And then they talked about amalgamation. Now, the percentages of lease permits in these individual three areas for these wells, there's SCS 1, SCS 2, and SCS 3. And the amounts that they have of lease permits signed are 89.14 in the first one. In the second well, it was 92.43%. And in the third one, 96.77%. So these people are getting equitable, not just compensation. The wording is very subtle, and you wouldn't necessarily pay attention to those two different words unless somebody pointed it out to you. So, because all you hear is compensation, you don't hear the word prior to it. But equitable compensation.
Jason and I talk about this all the time, because a lot of this arose with DEI and some of these agendas that were put forth, because it's about the wordsmithing.
Correct.
And if you change a word, well, to the average ear, it doesn't sound different, or it doesn't equate to something different, but it's very different. And that's why words matter.
Correct. And just compensation refers to people, as I see it, being able to get what they want for what they are giving up. Equitable compensation requires good faith efforts being made. Favored nations clause status, or favored nations, the clause means whoever gets the best price or the best rate, then everyone gets that highest amount. And that, was touted by Governor Burgum as being very, very good, because, everybody gets the best possible price on that one. But do they?
That works two different ways, because you also can we see this all the time. You've been in media long enough, and I have too. We see that around political season, because companies who sell advertising, they want to keep that rate up, because the lowest rate is what every political candidate gets. So
Correct.
And it doesn't have to be a candidate. If you're giving a sweetheart deal to a regular advertiser, that political candidate gets that rate as well. So that's where the favored nation works the other direction. And there's a serious danger of that happening to landowners here.
Well, in that case too, I'm just wondering if they're not okay. So amalgamation equates to taking,
Theft.
and in the taking, you don't even get to negotiate your own price.
Yeah.
You get what you get.
Okay, so there's a theme here running in government, because one of the things we ran into with Burleigh County Commission was central assessing. And central assessing, if you have infrastructure in your county that you don't get to assess, so wind farms, railroads, pipelines, transmission lines, all that, the state assesses that. And the state doesn't assess it. They ask the company, it's like, what's your asset worth?
Well, and who is losing out?
So you're going to Summit, or, hey, what's your land worth?
Landowners are the people who are taking it in the shorts.
Yeah.
Here, as I see it, and I like
the residents, the taxpayers,
the people who are paying for that $300,000 re-education form. It's insult to injury.
And I'm usually not a conspiracy theorist, but is there something bigger at foot, because they don't care, because they feel entitled, because they don't believe in private property owner? That's been something going on a global basis for a long time now. And if you're thumbing your nose at private property rights because you don't think that people should have the right to own private property, do you care?
No.
That's where this comes in.
Yeah, the storage facilities map was up on the screen, and then they said that they talked about the three different areas. The first...
Did they talk about the 17 old test oil wells that
are within
in
this
that
area? They
as well?
really didn't mention that
really,
too
they didn't
much.
talk about that, because I guarantee, if not 2/3, at least half of them are incorrectly plugged, because that's what we found traditionally.
The first area that they talked about, the TB Line Gang one, is 29,444.72 acres. So almost 30,000 acres on the first one. The second one, the BK Fisher area, is 28,844.57 acres. Again, near 30,000. And the third one, the KJ Hintz one, is not no relation, different hints. They have a T, I do not. That is 31,238.68 acres. Again, near 30,000 each one of these areas. So
if you're displacing salt water in these areas, and by the way, they're guessing because they have to inject it to find out what'll happen. If you're displacing salt water and you create a salt flat there, how much, because I wasn't adding them up as we went, how much of that land is in production right now that would be out of production in North Dakota from a
future
food production perspective?
Great question. Well,
and by the way,
30, 30, 30.
Yeah.
I mean, if you average them, that's about 90,000 acres,
and
right? Yep.
everything else.
And the
that
other
are in
thing
there.
is that what's really fascinating is if you look at the maps, you can see the projected area that they're going to cover, and then another area, and then another area outside that, because they're not
sure.
quite sure how far that's going to go.
You know, this is funny too, because globally, and it doesn't matter what culture, what nationality, whoever it is, what's the one thing that keeps coming back up over and over again for people's concern? For us in this country, it's energy prices, food. It's food security.
Security, right? Mm-hmm.
People want to know where their next meal's coming from. Yeah. And it doesn't matter where your economic or social status is. That's the number one concern globally.
Well, on this application,
projects like this put that at risk.
Yeah, when it says the applicant summit has met all century 38-22 and administrative 43-05-01 code requirements for permitting CO2 storage facilities, it says per the policy set forth by the legislature in 38-22-01, geologic storage of CO2 is in the public interest.
Okay, and that means that's the road, the pathway to get common carrier status. That's the problem.
It is in the public interest, according to this.
There's so much more information. I suggest you go to Beck TV, becktv.plus, find all things Summit Carbon Solution, and really pay attention. Talk to people. I mean, this concerns all of us when they're using our tax dollars for private. Well, I can go into the Commerce Department, too, about some of that. But, Lori, thanks for coming in this morning.
My pleasure.
I know we left a lot on the table, but next week,
do.
we'll get to that next week. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk. Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bakken. Joining us in the studio, Rebecca Binstock with the Ethics Commission, and a lot of talk about ethics with what's coming up with the next session. And it's always a conversation because really the Ethics Commission is something newer in North Dakota. And Rebecca, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a background for the Ethics Commission? And then I want to get into why it's important, that educational piece now, because it's about education. I mean, people don't know if they're doing something ethically wrong with the way the statutes, as you've got new legislatures coming in. And we do have a lot of turnover now with term limits. So it's about an educational process. And I want to get into that, but a little background on the Ethics Commission.
Perfect. Well, good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me. So let's talk about the Ethics Commission in general. So the North Dakota Ethics Commission was formed from an initiated measure, right? We had an initiated measure back in 2018. It was on the ballot. The voters passed it. They approved it. It became effective in 2019. Then we had, in 2019, we had 5 commissioners that were appointed. So the individuals who serve on the Ethics Commission are appointed by a consensus agreement, a little bit unique, not majority, consensus agreement of the governor, Senate Majority Leader, and Senate Minority Leader. So we have 5 commissioners that are appointed in 2019, and then they get to start doing their work, right?
So a little background, when the initiated measure fired up, I mean, because it's kind of something you take for granted a little bit. It's like, well, why do we need an ethics commission? Because it's North Dakota. Shouldn't we be ethical to begin with?
We should be ethical to begin with.
Be,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But it was, some of it was some of the lobbying pieces, and people were having concerns that, is the legislator, because you got to remember this is back before term limits, and was it a club, or are we getting the best value? Were people doing things that they just don't know about, and that's where the education piece comes in. But you got to have an ethics commission to be able to do that education.
Right. So I think back, if you look before the initiated measure, there was a lot of we don't know. Right.
Yeah.
We don't have,
gray area.
we don't have, and we didn't have information, right? We didn't have a way to disclose stuff. There wasn't a way to process certain complaints or certain issues, right? So there was a lot of, I think, unknown. And then whenever you have unknown, it creates uncertainty and questions, and then you start asking a lot of questions, right? And then you did have things that were popping up in the media that were problems. And so then you can then, people would take those and then run with it, let's say, right? So with the Ethics Commission coming into place, let's fast forward. So what did the voters put it into place? What does it actually do, right?
It's about setting up standards and rules so people, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you're in politics, if you don't know the rules of the game, then there's an opportunity to blur some lines, whether intentional or not.
Whether intentional or not.
And that is the education piece of the Ethics Commission, because it's here. There's no gray area. You know where the line is, and you don't cross it.
Yep. So that is really what the Ethics Commission is all about, right? Is providing that education. So we do have an investigative arm, right, where we can investigate things that come into our office. But primarily what we want to focus on is preventing issues and making sure that people have the information ahead of time so that they can make more ethical, better decisions, right?
Make sure they're educated so that, am I getting a cup of coffee from somebody I shouldn't be getting a cup of coffee?
Right. Or something else. Am I voting on
Yeah.
something that I should be voting on? Is it okay that I take this action, right? And so, before we had the Ethics Commission, and even before recently, the educational component there was not a lot of education for state public officials, legislators. So as the Ethics Commission really came into its own, we want to talk about and provide educational resources. So that can be done, and we do it through a variety of ways. So the very first thing that we have is we do webinars. We talk about, we have educational sessions that are an hour-long discussion on a topic, okay? So that is one of the first things that we put out. You can listen to those on our website. Those are available to everybody. So the other thing that we've done is we've made information hopefully accessible, meaning that you can access it if you need it.
Well, there's
and that's
kind of three components to this. So, and we're talking about the legislature coming into session now.
Yes, legislature's coming into session.
The legislators being able to go, okay, I have a question, and being able to go and look at those guidelines. But the media as well to know, if you're going to go chase a story down, was something ethical? Is there a violation there or not?
Yep.
And then the public, because it's about the constituents, and having that knowledge as a voter and a constituent and a taxpayer and resident of North Dakota is very valuable too, because I'm a big proponent. People should be doing their homework, and there's some accountability, and you should know what is right and wrong, especially today with social media, because good Lord, something can get off the rails in a hurry, because it's rumor and conjecture, and it's not factual, and stuff can go in different directions because of social media today. So having the ability to know all the information, and as the Ethics Commission has really turned into an educational resource, I like the direction you guys are going.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of trepidation when the Ethics Commission first was created.
Yeah, they were concerned, a lot of individuals were concerned that it would be this gotcha kind of entity, that it could be politically weaponized, that sort of thing.
Correct.
And that's still, we have to address some of those concerns and some of those issues on the investigation side. But it really comes down to providing information to the stakeholders, like you talked about, the public, the media, public officials, right? And how we do that really comes down to what, especially as we are moving into legislative session, right? That we are pushing forward with that. So also keep in mind that as we are doing education, so just to kind of give you an idea, so far this fall, right? We are currently in the organizational session, right? Organizational session is here right now. And so we've been doing education specifically with legislators. So that's been our focus for the last few days. Let's give them the information that they need to know, best practices, and let's not do it in a big auditorium, bring them all in. We want to have one-on-one conversations. We want to have small groups. So we've been doing that. We also provide a lot of information to them ahead of time so that they know. And also that quick guidance, right? Informal guidance, like, hey, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this?
Where's my crib notes?
Yeah, where's my notes? What do I need to do? So we've tried to create kind of workable things, because they're not legislators, 100% of the time, right? Or they're new. So we try to provide them with those resources.
And as a quote-unquote citizen legislature, which I'll debate at times, but you do have people working in the private sector and doing other things, and there is an opportunity, whether intentional or not, for the private side to bleed into the legislative side, and they need to know that.
Yes, yeah. And I think that a lot of individuals who serve in the legislature that have that are aware of that, and that's one of the things that we're talking about.
We're talking with Rebecca Minstock with the North Dakota Ethics Commission. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
The Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Rebecca Binstock with the North Dakota Ethics Commission. We're talking about ethics, new session coming in, a lot of new legislators coming in after the first of the year with the session, and a lot to know, a lot to learn for them, for the media, for the public when it comes to ethics. One of the questions I've been asked fairly recently is, if somebody were to have an ethics question or think there's a violation, what's the process of, who do I report this to? Who do I talk to? Do you just call up the North Dakota Ethics Commission and go, hey, I have a concern. Does this fit the criteria? Is it as simple as that, or what's the process?
Yeah, great question, Steve. You know what? It is as simple as that. So the Ethics Commission can take a complaint in from a North Dakota resident in really any form. It can be a phone call. There is a hotline that people can submit tips through. That number is available on our website. There's also a form, an online form that somebody can submit through our website as well. We've made that pretty user-friendly so that you can attach documents if you need to, submit information. Or if you're not sure, you can just call and ask us. So we have staff available. The Ethics Commission doesn't have jurisdiction or authority over local officials. That's probably one of the questions we get the most frequently.
Yeah, where's the bottom end? Where's the line?
You know, who do you guys investigate? Alleged violations against, and so we
it's
don't.
The state level.
And it's state level, so it is state level. So
okay,
we
but
do have
casting
that.
the net statewide, then that could go into higher education. That could go into legislators. That could be Commerce Department, any state agency, that's under your jurisdiction.
So there's some exceptions. So it's going to be, the definition or the word is public officials, anybody who's a public official. So this is going to be anybody who's elected, right? This is going to be our legislators, our statewide elected individuals, anybody in the executive branch who's appointed. So that's going to include cabinet members and then individuals who serve in the executive branch who are appointed, right? So there's certain individuals such as myself. I'm not in the executive branch. We're in this independent ethics commission, but I am appointed to serve in my role, right? So it also is going to include individuals who serve on the ethics commission. They included themselves within that. They have to follow the rules. And then it's going to include legislative employees. So there are general executive branch employees who are serving in the state. They are going to be excluded. So it is limited to the number of people. Or the individuals. So, but let's say that somebody does have a complaint or a question. They're not quite sure. They can come to us. They can talk to us about it. If they do want to move ahead and file a complaint with the commission, it really is, it's a 3-step process. And it requires us to initially review something once it comes in and say, hey, can we even be looking at this? Is this something?
Step one is you're required to... If somebody has a question, you're required to assess that. Yep. And I can imagine a lot of cases because of lack of education, people go, hey, I think there's something here, a violation. And when you go through it, it's like, that doesn't meet the criteria.
Right. We do a lot of that.
Right. And so, again, upfront, diffusing what could have been something that was blown out of proportion and not accurate, because it's about being accurate and having the right information. So
it is, yes. Yeah. So we can do that right away. We can handle things that aren't within our jurisdiction. We can get rid of them pretty quickly. Then we are left with moving toward, so we review it. We say, yep, this is something that the Ethics Commission can look into. No, it's not. If it isn't something the Ethics Commission can look into, there might be another local entity or a county commission, city commission that something should go to. And we do, let people know who come to us.
So getting things to the right place is very important,
too. Part of it is getting things to the right place. Now, we can't provide them legal advice, but we can certainly say, hey, maybe talk to this person. Let's go there. The second step is trying to informally resolve anything that happens. So we're required under the statute to try to informally resolve. What we have learned over the course of the last 4 years in dealing with this is that is not the easiest process, because you have a complainant who is concerned and may see something that they don't like, and it's hard to get that done. We have been successful on a few occasions, but then at that point, if we can't resolve something, then we move into more of an investigation stage, right? Where we are fact gathering, where we are interviewing people, we're taking depositions, we're moving towards that. So then we can create a report. Now, I will tell you that the commission is actually looking to change this process just a little bit to get away from some of the negative connotation, because there is an education component even in that process, that somebody could have done something that they didn't even realize they shouldn't have done really early on, and they would have been able to correct it and say, hey, If I would have known that, I wouldn't have done it. So we're trying to
kind
actually
of a remediation
yes,
process.
absolutely. We're trying to build in that education into this process. So expect some changes in the coming session for how that process looks in an effort to almost streamline it.
So when you're looking at a complaint coming in, it's first of all, is it a complaint? Mm-hmm. Second of all, is it going in the right place that it needs to go to?
Yep.
And then the third part is, okay, there's something here and there's an investigation that takes place now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct.
So what does an investigation look like?
Yep. So an investigation is going to look very similar to a civil case, right? Where we gather documents from places, whether it is private citizens, whether it is other state agencies. We're going to be conducting interviews with people. We're going to be requesting records, those sorts of things, asking questions of people so that we can then get a full picture of what happened. Sometimes that can be pretty short, right? Something happened, very direct, involves few people. Sometimes that's bigger. And so then at the end, as executive director, I produce a report that the commission and the individual who we are, investigating, I don't want to use that kind of negative connotation, but that is in this process, that they are both provided. And so then from there, the commission decides if that is an ethical violation or if it is not an ethical violation.
And, okay, we know what happens if it's not. What happens if it is?
What happens if it is? So there are certain circumstances where there's fines or penalties that are associated with those, and that's laid out. Some of the other things is if there is an ethical violation, the fact that there is an ethical violation, is in fact the consequence, right? That there is now a public finding out there that something shouldn't have happened, right?
And an ethical violation can reach different levels as well, because it's like, did somebody take a cup of coffee from somebody they shouldn't have, or is it more intensive than that? So I can imagine there's a great big spectrum.
There is. Yeah. So there is a spectrum. And then the other thing is that the commission can actually refer its findings to another state entity once it's done. So if it needs to hand it over to, the Secretary of State to do some auditing, or to a county commission, or, I can't imagine a time when that would come up, but another state entity.
Yeah, it really could.
It could.
Rebecca Binstock, Executive Director of North Dakota Ethics Commission. This is Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
1270.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town on Super Talk 1270.
Super Talk 1270, you're tuned to Talk of the Town. I'm Steve Bach, along with Brad Ogg, General Manager at the Cool Running, 701 South Washington in Bismarck. Brad, okay, you had the 10% sale on top of everything clearance. It didn't matter what it was, 10% off. That was pretty cool. Did a little shopping myself yesterday. And now you've got the 12 days of Christmas. Tell us about that.
So yeah, every day we got a new deal up front. So yesterday, I think they had one of the DeWalt, I think it was the Impact driver set.
It was.
Yesterday, up half off yesterday. Today we got a clam hat for $10. We got a DeWalt knife for $10. We got tow ropes for $15. There's ice fishing sleds in here. On the, December 20th, we got the Outdoor Revival tumblers. And those are only $7. I mean, every day now through Christmas, we will have a deal up there. And then the final day, the day before Christmas, we got 16 packs of batteries half off.
Oh, nice.
Front, so
those are always
they're
good.
loading us up with a couple hundred of those bad boys to take care of that event. But no, it's fun. They're doing all sorts of different things to drive traffic into the stores. The everything's on sale thing yesterday was insane in here.
Yeah, Wendy and I popped in, and it was absolutely nuts. I was like, okay, I got to go in because I got to get my gloves and something else. And she had to get up some, she's doing all her Christmas baking right now, so she needed some baking supplies. We had to go to the little nut aisle and get some walnuts that are always on sale, and great price for that. And then she was putting a little gift basket for a sick friend. So we went into Candy Cove. It was like, we had a date day, Brad. It was a date day.
I like it. I did Candy Cove. I was in the Nutcracker with the kids this past weekend. And the ballet company has something called Merit Gifts, where it's just like a good luck deal, and they give each other little little gifts, and my gift to the adult dressing room was a humongous old-fashioned candy basket. And it was kind of a trip down memory lane for some of us. It had a blackjack gum in there and the little dot things and butterscotch did. It was all sorts of crazy good things going on in that basket. So we all had a lot of fun, and I was able to check in. The store was really good at sending me updates yesterday where we're at and how it's going. And it was all around a great weekend.
Although I have to admonish my wife a little bit because the two things I went in there for was a cream soda out of the...
Oh, Shasta was on sale, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was $3.99. I forgot. And what's nice about this sale is it runs all the way through Christmas. So this thing we had now, we activated on the 13th. I think it was the 13th. It was Thursday or Friday last week, and this ad runs through Christmas Eve. So we don't have to change any signs. We just get to focus on selling.
And my cream soda, which is not on sale that often, but I always stock up when I do, and it was another 10% off. It was kind of cool. And I got yelled at for grabbing another pair of gloves out of the glove bin that was such an incredible deal, which is still there, $9.99. But she's like, "You have enough gloves. You never have enough gloves. You just
not
don't.
for
No.
not for $8.99. You don't.
No. So
It was another 10% off.
yeah. So, and she appreciates my bargain shopping.
Maybe not in the moment, but she does.
Yeah, not in the moment. Definitely not in the moment. One of the other things, too, and we haven't had a whole lot of use for them yet, but as I was walking around, I did notice you are very well stocked on snowblowers.
Yeah, we did get a few more in. So we had, let's see, when was that last? It was November. We had a little bit of snow, sold through quite a few. And then we got restocked. So we're back in business. We even got a couple Husqvarnas on sale this week.
I noticed that.
You got to come on in and pick what you want.
That price was incredible. And, I was thinking about just upgrading because I've got a little bit older snowblower. It's in great shape, but I want the big light so I can do it in the dark. I really do.
Yes.
And I don't have that on mine.
And they're all the LED lights now. So,
I know.
they are pretty bright. They're getting through. One thing that really surprised me is we do carry, we're out again, but a DeWalt 60-volt cordless snowblower. And I have to be honest, I was really hesitant when we got that in. Like, is that really going to handle North Dakota well? And we sold our first two in the first week, and we got two more in. We sold them within the first week. We got two more in, and we sold them. So we told these guys, you guys got to come back and give us some feedback after, so after that October one, the one guy came in and he was pretty impressed, he's like, well, it takes 2 batteries. He goes, I did all right, and he goes, it exceeded my own expectations. So we got 6 of them out there. So we're going to have these guys come back and tell us how they run. But it was really it was interesting to see snow blowers getting into the cordless battery market.
I just had this thought. If we get a great big snow dump, because January, February, March, we get that heavy snow, you could do a demo day and get people just to clear your lot out for you.
Ooh, I like where you're going with that.
Yeah, I see how that works.
Yeah.
But I was in picking up a new steel shovel because I like a good steel shovel for getting all the ice off the driveway and off the sidewalks, and I kind of wore mine out. It was 30-some years old, and hey, with 10% off on top of it, came in, boom, new shovel, good to go.
Yeah, we have 2 shovels we use for the store. One of them is the Dakota Blade.
Got that. I got that last year.
It's a quick removal, but then the second one is a steel shovel. Having that blade, especially if it starts to freeze a little bit, because, the last thing we want is ice out in front of our doors. And that steel shovel, that's a good one. It can really get down and scrape and get stuff up. So those are our 2 go-to in store, Dakota Blade and the steel shovels.
Well, it was funny because I was waffling over the snow blade and the steel shovel last year because I knew I had to replace the steel shovel. I was like, I'm going to try that. I'm like, why I didn't get one of those 30 years earlier is beyond me. But I use that more than my snowblower because it's quicker and easier by the time I pull the snowblower out.
Well, yeah, what it was probably 20, 28, 30 inches wide, probably at least. I don't know if it's quite 3 feet. But all you do, you get to the end, you just flip it over, and then you just go back down the line. It's one of those no-brainer, shovels. You have a decent-sized driveway. you only got an inch of snow. This thing will clear it in no time.
Beautiful, Brad. 12
Heck,
days.
We'll let you demo that. If you come when it's snowing a little bit, we got one out front. You just grab
there you
it,
go.
get a little feel out in the front of the store. We're good like that.
Employees would love that. I'm sure they would.
Yeah.
I always grab carts when I'm going back into stores. So it's like I park by the cart corral because I know if I have to have a cart, I'm going to have to dump it there anyway. But I pay it forward because if there's a couple carts in there, I always bring them in with me.
And then you have one, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's the little things in life. We got these new feed carts. They're flatbeds, and they nest into each other, so they take up very little room. We're very excited to have 8 more feed carts join our store's inventory of flatbed carts, but they all nest into each other, and it's really cool. But it's the little things that make us really happy.
It truly is.
Nesting flatbeds and letting customers test drive Dakota snowblades. That's where we're at right now.
I love it. 12 days of Christmas going on now. Something different every day up until Christmas. Make sure you stop in at the Cool Running 701 South Washington in Bismarck. Brad, you have a great day, my friend.
Hey, you too. Thanks, Steve.
Brad Ock, General Manager over at Runnings on Super Talk 1270.
Talk of the Town. Weekday mornings starting at 9 on Super Talk 1270 and the free Super Talk 1270 mobile app.